Michael Colin Cowdrey, Baron Cowdrey of Tonbridge, CBE, better known as Colin Cowdrey, played for Oxford University Cricket Club, Kent County Cricket Club and the England cricket team. He was a right-hand batsman who delighted crowds throughout the world with his style and elegance. Cowdrey was the first cricketer to play 100 Test matches, celebrating the occasion with a century against Australia in 1968. In all he played 114 tests, making 7,624 runs at an average of 44.06, overtaking Wally Hammond as the most prolific Test batsman, and taking 120 catches as a fielder, breaking another Hammond record. Cowdrey made 22 Test centuries and was the first batsman to make centuries against the 6 other Test-playing countries of his era: Australia, South Africa, the West Indies, New Zealand, India and Pakistan, making hundreds against them all both home and away. He toured Australia 6 times in 1954-55, 1958-59, 1962-63, 1965-66, 1970-71 and 1974-75, equaling Colin Blythe's record. And in his last Test, fans hung out a banner. MCG fans thank Colin 6 tours. In the first Test at Edgbaston in 1957, Cowdrey added 411 runs in 511 minutes with Peter May against the West Indies, the third highest stand in Test cricket at the time, the highest from the 4th wicket until 2009, the highest stand for England, and the highest stand against the West Indies. His highest first-class score was 307 against South Australia on the MCC Tour of Australia in 1962-63, the highest score for the Marylebone Cricket Club overseas and the highest by a tourist in Australia. Cowdrey was awarded a CBE in 1972, knighted in 1992, ennobled in 1997, and posthumously inducted into the ICC Cricket Hall of Fame in 2009. He is the third sportsman to be given a memorial service in Westminster Abbey, after Sir Frank Worrell and Bobby Moore, and the MCC Spirit of Cricket Cowdrey Lecture was inaugurated in his memory. Early life. Cowdrey's father, Ernest Arthur Cowdrey, played for the Surrey County Cricket Club, Secondshire and Berkshire County Cricket Club in the minor counties, but lacked the talent to enter first-class cricket, and his father made him join a bank. Ernest Cowdrey had been born in Calcutta, moved to India to run a tea plantation and played the 1926-27 MCC touring team for the Madras Europeans. She and top scored with 48. His mother, Wally Cowdrey, played tennis and hockey. Michael Colin Cowdrey was born on the family estate at Tutankhamun, Madras Presidency, although his birthplace was usually misrecorded as Bangalore, 100 miles to the north. His father made an application for him to join the prestigious Marylebone Cricket Club while still an infant. Cowdrey had no schooling in India, but his father and servants taught him cricket as soon as he could walk. When Cowdrey was 5, he was taken to England and attended Homefield Preparatory School, Sutton in 1938-45, where the headmaster Charles Walford instilled in him the purity of batting technique that would become Cowdrey's hallmark. Cowdrey made a century in his first game for the school, but a recount made it only 93, and Jack Hobbs sent him a letter of commiseration and a cricket bat. His parents returned to India in 1938, and because of the Second World War he did not see them again until they came back to Britain in 1945. During the holidays he stayed with relatives in Croydon and Bognor Regis, where he watched dog fights in the Battle of Britain, and on his uncle's farm near Market Bosworth. In 1945 he went to Alf Gover's cricket school for 3 weeks, and his father enrolled him at Tonbridge School where he could qualify for Kent. Gover telling the Tonbridge coach Ewart Aspel that Cowdrey should join the first, she immediately, a rarity for first-year pupils. In the team trial match he was 4 years younger than the other boys, but took 17 wickets with his leg spin and became an established part of the team. Still only 13, in July 1946 he became the youngest player to play at Lord's for Tonbridge against Clifton, making 75 and 44 and taking 3/58ths and 5/33 to win the match by 2 runs. Tonbridge later established the Cowdrey Scholarships for sporting excellence in his memory. Early career 1948 to 54. Cowdrey was asked to play for Kent Young Amateurs in 1948 and made 157 against Sussex Young Amateurs, 87 against Middlesex Young Amateurs and 79 against Surrey Young Amateurs. He was asked to join the Kent Second She in 1949 and played Norfolk, Wiltshire and Devon. In 1949-1950 Cowdrey was made the school cricket captain, and in 1950 made 126 not out for public schools against the combined services at Lord's. This was followed by being called up for Kent County Cricket Club while still only 17, and he made 15 and 26 on his first-class debut against Derbyshire. Cowdrey made his first-class century in 1951, 143 for the Free Foresters versus Oxford University, soon followed by 106 for the Gentlemen versus Players at Scarborough, captained by Len Hutton with Alec Bedser leading the bowling. After the match, the Yorkshire captain Brian Sellers told him, "If you are not playing for England and on that boat to Australia, there'll only be one person to blame." He made 1,189 runs in the 1951 season and was awarded his county cap by captain David Clarke after making 71 against the touring South Africans. At 18, the youngest man to be capped by Kent, Cowdrey won a Heath Harrison Exhibition Award and a place at Brasenose College at Oxford University to study geography in the autumn of 1951. He played for the Oxford University Cricket Club in 1952 and 1953 at the start of the season and the rest of the summer for Kent. He made 50 and 57 for the Gentlemen versus the 1953 Australians at Lord's. In 1954 he captained Oxford University and was a surprise choice for the MCC Tour of Australia, replacing Willie Watson. Len Hutton later told him that his selection was a gamble, but it was thought that his technique would be good on the hard Australian wickets. At 21, Cowdrey was the youngest man in the side, and the schoolboy photographs used in the brochures made him appear younger. He had yet to make a century in the county championship, go on tour or play a test, though he was made 12th man for the 4th test against Pakistan and fielded for 20 minutes, but was so nervous he could barely watch. The MCC team was seen off by family, friends and well-wishers on the Orsava. Cowdrey's parents came to see him off, and Len Hutton assured them that he would look after the young player. They were not the only well-wishers to see him off. Frank Ison saw a spare, stooped old man, dressed immaculately in a pinstripe suit, telling the Cowdrey, "When you reach Australia, just remember one thing, hate the bastards." He spoke with such vehemence that Ison asked George Duckworth who the old gent was. That was Douglas Jardine, a fellow Oxford University man who had come down especially to see Cowdrey. Soon after the voyage began, Cowdrey and Tyson were warned by the captain Len Hutton that they were secondary players who were expected to play little part in the test matches, but in the end their efforts would prove decisive in England's victory. They travelled first class on the Orsover, which took 6 weeks to arrive in Western Australia, after stopping for a one-day game against Ceylon, where Cowdrey made 66 not out. On their arrival in Perth, Cowdrey received a telegram that his father had died, but soldiered on, thanks to the advice and encouragement of his young teammate Peter May and father figure and Captain Len Hutton. Hutton made a small bet that Vic Wilson, a strapping Yorkshire farmer who could hit the ball many a mile, would score more test runs than Cowdrey on the tour. On their arrival in Perth, the MCC played a local Western Australian country. She and Cowdrey made 48 not out and took 4/35 with his leg spin. Against New South Wales, Cowdrey had to rescue the innings with Hutton. He made a sweetly timed 110 as they added 163 together, but no other batsman exceeded 11 and the team was out for 252. In the second innings, Cowdrey opened with Vic Wilson as Hutton tried out potential openers. Wilson was out for a duck, but Cowdrey made another 100, but only Hutton himself, batting at number 6, gave him any help. The MCC were out for 327, Cowdrey and Hutton making 402 of the 577 runs scored, the other 9 batsmen making 117 in 2 innings. Cowdrey bowled again and went for 38 runs off 3 overs while doing impressions of the Australian fast bowlers Ray Lindwall and Keith Miller. With a pair of centuries against the strongest state side in Australia, Cowdrey was called up for his debut in the first test at Brisbane, even though he made 4-0 against Queensland. Hutton put Australia into bat and saw them pile up 601/8. The only good news was that Cowdrey took the first of his record 120 test catches to dismiss both Australian openers Les Favell and Arthur Morris. When England finally got to bat on the third day, they promptly collapsed to 25 quarters, but Cowdrey made 40 and added 72 for the 5th wicket with Trevor Bailey. This did not prevent the follow-on, where Cowdrey made 10, and England lost by an innings. In the second test at Sydney, Australia had a first innings lead of 74 and England had collapsed to 55 thirds when Peter May and Cowdrey came together and made a disciplined stand of 116. Every run a precious inch of ground won back to a moment when the Ashes seemed to have receded almost out of sight. The recovery was shaped by batsmanship of a classic method executed by 2 young men. This allowed Typhoon Tyson to bowl England to a thrilling 38-run victory to even the series. The third test in Melbourne was the highlight of Cowdrey's tour, perhaps even his career. Hutton won the toss and elected to bat on New Year's Eve, but soon regretted it. Miller opened the bowling with a spell of 9-8-5-3 to send Hutton, Bill Edridge and Dennis Compton back to the pavilion in quick time. When Ray Lindwall dismissed Peter May for a duck, England were in deep trouble at 41 quarters. Ralph Barker wrote, surviving the early horrors through perfect technique, the 22-year-old Cowdrey made 50 out of 69 and 100 out of 158. He completed his maiden Test century, adding 74 with Trevor Bailey and 54 with his Kent teammate Godfrey Evans before falling to Ian Johnson with a ball that hit the edge of one of the cracks in the wicket, which was now assuming the appearance of a tessellated pavement. It jagged back to pass behind Kipper's pads and hit his leg stump. Bill O'Reilly, not an easy man to impress, said it was the best Test innings he had ever seen, and aged only 22, Cowdrey was the youngest Englishman to make an Ashes century since Jack Hearn, on the same ground in 1912. Although Cowdrey would make 22 Test centuries, they would all be measured against the yardstick of his Melbourne 100. His driving, concentration and command were all faultless, a tribute to his wonderful ability. As Frank Ison recalled, runs did not flow, they were grafted from a pitch which kept the batsman hopping around as delivery after delivery tickled the ribs. Colin was icily superb. For 4 hours his concentration never wavered. He stroked the ball through the cover and mid-wicket gaps in the field. Shooters became more frequent, but Colin dug them out. When I joined him at the wicket he was a run short of his maiden Test century, a goal he achieved with a scampered single. If he ever scored a better 100, I hope that I'm there to see it. Cowdrey made 102 of England's first innings of 191, and once again this was enough for Tyson to bowl his team to victory as the tourists took a 2-1 lead in the series. The fourth Test at the Adelaide Oval saw Australia make 323, the highest innings since Brisbane, which England overtook thanks to Cowdrey adding 99 with Hutton and 70 with Compton. Australia was bowled out cheaply in the second innings, but Cowdrey was hit in the face by the ball, which gave him a bruised nose and eyes. He was out for 4 in England's run chase, but the 5-wicket win was enough to win the series 3-1 and retain the Ashes. Cowdrey spent 5 days in hospital, but still played in the 5th Test back at Sydney and was caught behind by Len Maddox off Ian Johnson for a first ball duck to end the series, with 319 runs. After Australia, the team proceeded to New Zealand, but Cowdrey made few runs in a low-scoring series in which England easily won both Tests, under Peter Mayne 1955-58. On his return from Australia, Cowdrey decided to drop out of Oxford so he could concentrate on his career with Kent and England. No longer an undergraduate, he was called up for national service, but discharged after 2 weeks in the Royal Air Force due to a hereditary disability of rigid toes on which he previously had an operation. This caused some controversy as he promptly made 44, 101, 5, 139, 48, 44, 115 not out and 103 not out, hardly the scores of an invalid. The press suggested that strings had been pulled on his behalf and questions were asked in the House of Commons by Gerald Nabarro MP, though he apologized after the true facts became known. Cowdrey received hate mail from the parents of national servicemen, and took great care to answer them personally. He was called up from the 3rd Test against South Africa, but was batted by the fast bowlers Peter Heine and Neil Adcock, making 150, which he considered to be the worst bruising of his career, and Cowdrey pulled out of the series rather than add to his injuries. England beat Australia 2-1 to retain the Ashes, thanks mainly to Jim Laker's 46 wickets. Cowdrey made only 244 runs, though he had a successful opening partnership with Peter Richardson. They added 53 and 151 in the first Test at Trent Bridge and 174 in the fourth at Old Trafford. This was the Test where Laker took 19/90ths and Cowdrey took a catch to give Tony Locke his only wicket. South Africa 1956-57. Cowdrey became unaccountably obsessed with defence. His introspective nature made him over-receptive to sterile theory, such as playing with the pad, and lack of self-confidence prevented him from breaking out of his chains. "There were moments," wrote Alan Ross after watching him bat against South Africa at Cape Town in 1957, "when one wanted to send sent him out to double scotch and instruct him to take the cotton wool off his bat and really hit it. The generosity of the white South African hosts towards the MCC team was almost their undoing. Cowdrey, remembering, if we were not actually killed by kindness, we were certainly reduced to something well short of the fitness that a test team must maintain. Our standards dropped alarmingly. It was not fatal at the time, for in 1956 South Africa did not have the cricketing resources to expose our indulgence. It was enough to turn a 2-0 lead for the tourists into a 2-2 draw against Clive van Ryneveld's energetic team. The all-rounder Trevor Bailey opened the innings with Peterson, and Cowdrey returned to batting at number 5, where he made 331 runs. He made 59 and took 3 catches in the first test at the New Wanderers in Johannesburg, and made his second test century 101 in 369 minutes in the second at Cape Town, which England won by an innings, and batted for 200 minutes, making 55 in the second innings of the fourth back at Johannesburg, when Hugh Tayfield took 9 113ths in South Africa's 17-run win. In 1950, the spinners Sonny Ramadan and Alf Valentine had confounded the England batsmen to give the West Indies a 3-1 series win. Ramadan still exerted his hold, taking 7/49ths to dismiss England for 186 in the first innings of the first test at Edgbaston. The West Indies made 474, and Cowdrey joined Peter May at 113 in the second innings, still 175 runs behind. May wrote of Cowdrey's steadying influence on me when I was charging down the wicket and trying to hit everyone into the car park. I recall he calmed me down and said occupation of the crease was the vital requirement. Cowdrey ruthlessly padded away any ball from Ramadan outside off stump, where he could not be given out leg before wicket. It was typical of Cowdrey that he should work out the theory so punctiliously, but his tactic became popular with less talented batsmen, to the complaints of purists and detriment of the game. May made 285 not out and Cowdrey 154, his first Test century in England, and together they added 411 runs in 511 minutes, the third highest stand in Test cricket at the time, the highest from the fourth wicket until 2009, the highest stand ever made for England, and the highest stand against the West Indies by any team. Ramadan was forced to bowl a heartbreaking 98-35-1792, the most overs by a bowler in a first-class innings, and was never the same force again. May declared on 583 quarters, setting the West Indies 286 to win in 60 overs, and they narrowly avoided defeat, ending the match on 77ths. After this, England won 3 tests by an innings to take the series 3-0, with Cowdrey making back-to-back centuries with his 152 in the second test at Lord's after coming in at 34 thirds, 55 in the third at Trent Bridge and 68 in the fourth at Headingley. He finished with 435 runs, the first time he had averaged over 36 in a Test series. This was the year that he took over from Doug Wright as the captain of Kent, with Les Ames as the manager, although it would be 10 years before the county reaped the rewards. There was no tour in 1957-58. In 1958, New Zealand lost 4 tests by large margins and survived a rain-soaked draw at the Oval. Cowdrey failed to score a century, but made 241 runs. He made 80 and 71 in the first test at Edgbaston, 65 in the second at Lord's, did not bat in the third at Headingley, was unfit for the fourth, and made 25 in the fifth at the Oval.